Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of the Imagine Your Future podcast. I tell you what, I'm incredibly excited today. I've got Prashant Kelker with me. Prashant is the Chief Strategy Officer for ISG. Not only is he the Chief Strategy Officer, he's one of the most brilliant guys in the business, an absolute star when it comes to thinking about the future, thinking about changes in the market, thinking about the impact on business. And last but not least, a really dear friend of mine. So Prashant, welcome.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for those glowing words too.
You're welcome. I'm really excited to be talking to Prashant tonight for so many reasons. First of all, we're going to take head on the challenges of generative AI. I suspect all of our listeners know about the launch of ChatGPT in November, but with OpenAI's launch of GPT 4.0, and just last week, the release of everything that they're doing for plugins and APIs, we are on this amazing trend. So part of what I wanted to talk to you about, Prashant, are what are all the use cases and the stories, and how do you sort of imagine this moving forward as we go on? I mean, I think we are on the cusp of AGI, which is just phenomenal. And I don't think any of us thought that we would be saying in 2023, we would honestly be on the cusp of artificial general intelligence. I think we thought that was a little further out. I think when we thought about some of the technology that we saw coming together in 2022, we saw spurts, but I don't know that anybody saw this except for maybe a few of the lucky ones at OpenAI and some others that really saw what the power is. So give me your initial thoughts.
Steve, you're right. I think we need to thank ChatGPT. We need to thank OpenAI for one thing. It brought the topic back into front and center. And I don't know whether you listened to this podcast of Sam Altman, and he was asked, if you go back in time and you go out into the future and look at a Wikipedia article of AGI, do you think that article would say ChatGPT was the start of it? And he almost said yes. So I think we need to thank the entire OpenAI community and company to bring this topic into front and center for all of us.
Yeah, I don't want to share how nerdy we both are, Prashant, but I spent my Saturday morning listening to the podcast as well. And Sam was incredibly humble, very, very humble. Recognized that he was standing on the shoulders of some giants in the industry. But it was really clear that, again, if you use the Wikipedia, which is probably going to be displaced by generative AI, interesting enough, but if you look at Wikipedia, I think if it looks back, it's going to say this was the moment. And I think the excitement that we're seeing, I think, is well-deserved. I think we're truly in the moment.
Exactly, Steve. You were asking about scales. That's what interests me a lot, especially given what you and I face every day. I'm starting to track what I'm starting to call creative industries. I don't know whether they're even called that. That's the entire media, art, music, literature. I think that's the industries which are going to see it as fast or even faster than anyone else. Maybe we're going to see some in scientific research and healthcare, but I think the creative industries are going to pave the path for the rest of us. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. But, on the B2B side, I think there's going to be a lot of disruption. But with so many technologies, I think it's going to be, quite frankly, B2C that's going to lead the way and sort of show us the art of the possible. So let me give you an easy example. 2 weeks ago, my wife called and said, hey, I want to do a trip to Italy. I said, great, I'll start planning it. I had no idea where to start, Prashant. No idea how to start a trip to Italy. But I said, yep, I'll do it. So I jumped on ChatGPT and I said, hey, I want to go to Italy. Didn't know where I wanted to go. Said, I think I want to be around the coast. I want to go to Florence. I want to go to a wine class or a couple wineries. My wife is celiac, so I want to do some cooking stuff. I want it to be gluten-free. These are the dates that I want to go, and I need to be on a train to Nice by this date. That's all I did. It was honestly 30 seconds of typing. It came back with a 10-day itinerary of the hotels, flights from London to Italy, the hotel recommendations or the locations that I wanted to stay, the sightseeing that I should do, where I should go, gluten-free cooking classes, all the reservations for all of the restaurants, all in less than 2 minutes. I honestly spent another 10 minutes fine-tuning a couple things. I wanted a couple different ideas in there. It came right back. The only thing it didn't have 2 weeks ago was a book now button. If it would have had a book now button, it would have been the entire trip booked all the way through with the plugins, with the capabilities that we see, and I get a book now button. That's going to be incredible. I didn't have to go to booking.com. I won't have to go to the airlines. I won't have to go to the train. I won't have to go to the hotel. I won't have to go to OpenTable. It is going to be, I think you said it or somebody else said it, the apex aggregator of how we think about these solutions. And it absolutely personally blew my mind on how powerful it was for something really as complex as vacation planning. So when I think about those types of scenarios, I'm like, wow, that's amazing.
Exactly, Steve. And you raised a very important point. That ChatGPT could be an apex aggregator. I mean, at the moment, their entire plugin architecture feels like a brand new app store to me. So
Yeah.
maybe everybody says this is the iPhone moment for ChatGPT. I think it's the App Store moment more than the iPhone moment. What happens if these plugins become two-way instead of one-way? That's when things get really interesting. Then you raised another topic, which I find very interesting. The way you just took your entire trip to Italy, and the way you structured your question would be very different to, let's say, I going in and saying, can you recommend a 3-day itinerary in Italy?
Exactly.
You did it differently. What if that becomes a new skill? What if prompt design becomes a brand new skill that we need in these times? Conversation tuning and prompt designing. Are these the new skills of the future?
You know, it's interesting because right now what I see is you do have to have a need to be more inquisitive. And you have to have the ability to structure questions and think through things and keep digging. But I'm already so impressed with the general language capabilities that it has that I think there will be a need for some prompting and walking through. But maybe our education system really starts changing. So we start teaching at an earlier level how to be more inquisitive. Instead of teaching rote memorization, how do we start teaching using the tools, the technologies, the capabilities that are there to ask deeper questions? Instead of remembering dates for, a major war, a major event, we ask questions of why did this happen? What were the frame of minds? What were the challenges? What are the current things that are there? And start exploring deeper, not only the human experience, but the science experience as you think through that.
Exactly. And imagine if that is brought back into a B2B scenario.
Exactly.
Right. And I was just talking to a cruise line company that was a week ago. And they were asking us the question, how should one think about prompt design when you think about generative AI? And that question caught me by surprise, and I had to really think. And I said, how can I answer this without using technology? And my mind went to English verbs. And I said, can I get back to you? And within a day, I got back to them with 8 verbs. Steve, I'd love to know what you think about this. I said, all vertical applications could be, and prompt design could be one of 8 things. You either recommend, or you predict, or you optimize, or you identify, or you personalize, you judge, you generate, or simulate. What do you think?
Wow. But those are really good. Those are really good, Prashant. I mean, they make you sort of capture the essence of so many of the things that you've talked through. I love the innovate. I love the predict. but sort of all of the verbs sort of capture sort of the types of capabilities to walk people through an experience.
Right? So then it's not so much about the engine itself. The engine is as good as you can prompt it. But what if the verb helps you to design the prompt?
Yeah, it's a good thought. I mean, if I think about our own business and I think about how we help clients with complex sourcing, how we help clients with complex benchmarks and all the types of questions that we ask and the data and the insights that we bring, it would be hard for somebody that's not skilled in the space to ask the same types of questions to get the right answers, right? You may get an answer, but you probably have to be skilled enough to ask the right questions to get the correct answer or the best answer for your situation. Imagine a prompting thing that really entices you to pull out more information about what you're really trying to do to drive that deeper thing. You know, I always talk about TurboTax analogy and different things because that guided tour, but a guided tour with generative AI or a guided tour with, AGI really makes it a great experience. A great experience at that point.
Right, exactly. And that's why I often get the question, or I read articles about will AI replace humans? I don't think so. I don't think AI will replace humans. But you know what I think? I think AI augmented humans, or humans who use AI might replace humans who don't.
I'll give a couple big shout outs. One, I think Microsoft got the name exactly right. I think AI is going to be a co-pilot. I think it's going to make us better. And it's interesting. I was on GitHub most of the weekend, and I was writing some things, and I was using GitHub to really see what it could do. And I tell you what, as you're writing, you're getting advice from it. It can code test. It can take a look at what you're doing. It can pull in other things. It truly is a co-pilot to make you better. I've seen a couple things on LinkedIn and some other stuff lately where a lot of people are really nervous about what AI could do, especially with job displacement. And one of the individuals had a thing on, will software development or software engineers go the same way that storage and chip and others, so otherwise we'll be plummeting. And I just thought, no way. As a matter of fact, it's going to make it so much stronger, right? We may have fewer developers per problem, but imagine all the problems that can now be solved with software, with engineering, because we understand more. We understand more about the problem. We can put more together. So I think we're at this precept where there's so much excitement and so many more types of things that we can do that I would love to go back in time to be an engineer again on this. So I think you're absolutely right. I think it's going to augment us. It's going to make us better. And just like so many disruptive technologies, so many new jobs. But let me ask you something. There's been a lot of press on the regulatory environment, how to set up guardrails. We've even had discussions on guardrails within the firm. And I've seen where the EU is coming out and trying to put some controls on it, going to have different classifications on the severity of it. I think Reuters had a big article this morning. What's your sense about at what stage should we start controlling this and managing this, and how should we think about that?
That's a great question, and a topic that I've also been struggling with, because I don't know on which side of this equation I should land on. I'm not so much for control. I'm all for innovation unleashed. But when I hear words like explainable AI, it's difficult. And I think, Steve, you read that book too, called Everyday Chaos by David Weinberger. And he makes an interesting point about conceptual models and working models. All of us are used to taking what we have as a concept and then coding it into a working model. AI turns it the other way around. The working model starts first, and then you may or may not understand why it is working the way it is, right? So that's where the working model has come before the conceptual model. So instead of trying to drive to explaining what the algorithm is when the algorithm is changing every minute, David makes a good case, and he says, why try to explain AI? Just try to see what it's solving for. So if you can control the goal, and if you look at every decision as actually a trade-off, between X and Y, if you can control the goal and if you can control the trade-off, you start having a semblance of management back on AI. I don't know whether that thinking is going into the regulatory thinking at the moment. That's why I fear that we might axe something at its birth, even before it has taken some life.
Yeah, that's my concern as well. And I'm reading the same book, and it's absolutely phenomenal. And I think a lot of the concepts really go back to, again, asking deeper, better questions and being more inquisitive. Because if I'm using it to achieve a goal, then I've got to be really clear what that goal is. And I've got to be clear, as he states, what are the trade-offs for that. But understanding the full path on maybe how I achieve that goal, I think that's the co-pilot approach, right? I can take over, I have my knowledge, but I also appreciate that it was able to do some things that I didn't have knowledge of, that it was able to pull together through multiple things that are validated with me to help us achieve that. I am concerned. I got a couple thoughts on it.
Sure.
If we go the path of facial recognition, AI, GDPR type things that are very much, I would say, invasive from a privacy standpoint, I think you do need controls on that, right? And I think it's fair. The government uses CCTV. I live in London. You're close to New York. We're both probably captured 100 times a day, and we don't even know it, probably more than that, right? But if the private citizens or others use that to invade our privacy and do things, I think that makes complete sense. And I think we do have to have protections in the law to do that. What I'm concerned about is we can halt things before we ever get there, right? We could put up controls on what we think GPT-4 or any of the LLM models will do before we even really make ideas, all under the thing, whether it's protecting jobs or protecting privacy. I think it's honestly too early to start doing this, and we don't even know what the art of the possible is. I get that that's always a slippery slope, and you've got to think through that, but I think we're too early for it right now, is my sense.
Exactly, Steve. And let's say even this happens, it's not like it is solved for everything. Let's take another example. Let's say I'm an insurance firm, and I'm trying to bring artificial intelligence into loan applications. Yeah, and in this example, it has nothing to do with the regulations. But what if you're trying to say, well, I want everyone to have equity and having loans? How should that AI engine solve for it? Who is everyone? How do you decide who gets it and who doesn't? Do you take credit records at all? Do you not? Do you predict? Who decides how you dissect? Right? So I think we are at the beginning of something, and I don't know that regulations can solve for everything. So I think we'll have the same conflict even in B2B cases.
Yeah, I think we will as well. I think we're already seeing that in cases. But some of that, I'm not quite sure that those problems don't exist today.
Exactly.
I mean, if I get my FICO credit score today, it may not be AI, but it's definitely a black box algorithm that we don't necessarily understand, right? So if my FICO score comes back at 530 and I need a 740 FICO score to apply for this, it will roughly tell me what I need to do it, but it could be inequitable on how it applies that, right? And so there is a lot of that. And I think there's been an awful lot of great studies on how to train AI, how to train the models and different things. But it does feel like LLMs are entering a new realm where they're able to pull so much data and 9 billion data points to sort of think through. that we will always have to watch for that and make sure that there's equity in the process as we go through. It's a great point.
Exactly, Steve. So, if we come back to our working day with B2B environments and B2B companies and B2B2C companies, what do you think they should be doing? Should they be focusing on an AI mindset, an AI organization? Is it about how they structure themselves? Do you think this will change the way their products are structured? Where should they even start? What are you hearing?
So I think it's going to have to make all of your products more intelligent. So whether this is using plugins, whether this is calling LLM APIs, whether this is thinking through how to integrate your data with GPT data, we're going to have to make products intelligent because that's what the consumer, the businesses are going to expect, right? So there's almost this expectation already that on the B2C side, we'll just take Bing and Google right now on the search side. But if you take that to ServiceNow and Salesforce, Workday, anything, we're going to expect that intelligence to be in, right? So if you have somebody in hire to retire space, let's take an HR example,
Right.
and we want to start collecting information that says, well, why do people leave an organization? And today we do some different charts and graphs, but it's difficult to really understand. But if you really started pulling together surveys and understanding and say, why do people leave organizations or why do they join certain organizations? That all calls for AI to be integrated there because there's just so much data to think through those, what appear to be simple questions, right? And you're going to see that at all, which means that the big SaaS providers, the big software houses, et cetera, are going to integrate. And I think organizations will integrate themselves as they go forward.
Do you think they're going to go towards products or do you think they'll go towards platforms? Where would you put your bets? I'm thinking more platforms.
Yeah, I think it's going to be both, quite frankly. I'd say platforms in general, but I think it's going to be a really vibrant API economy with all of them fed by some sort of AGI type capabilities. The question, and this goes back to sort of what we were saying before with an Apex aggregator, there could be a couple incredibly powerful ones. We think about some of the issues that we face right now with monopolies of certain tech. This could be one of those. This has that level of disruption across it, which is why I think it's good right now that there are APIs to it, there's plugins to it. We'll have to keep it open as much as we can to be able to do it. But I do think it'll be a combination of platforms and products, and a lot of the products in general will be point solutions that will quickly be absorbed into a platform, quite frankly.
Fully agree with you, Steve. And you and I keep exchanging book recommendations every week. And the one I'm reading at the moment, it's called The AI First Company by Ash Fontana. He makes a great case. He starts talking about data network effects as opposed to the standard network effects of platforms. So, enough has been written about network effects of platforms.
Yeah.
He says, what happens when two things enter this loop of network effects? The first is data, and then the second thing is learning data. And it's fantastic. He's developed an algorithm. He calls it the DLE algorithm, and he's written a book on each aspect of that algorithm. It's fantastic, and he takes this towards what the mindset should be, what the product platform structure should be, how AI first teams could look like. And it's absolutely fantastic. I'm 2/3 way through and making furious notes.
All right, I'm going to have to add that one to my list, Prashant. I have wrapped up several books over the last couple of weeks. I would say the Book of Why is my big recommendation. Absolutely phenomenal read by Judea Pearl that essentially starts with breaking some assumptions around chaos theory, but also breaking some assumptions that we've had for a long time in stats around cause and effect, and sort of mathematical proof for the existence of cause and effect, if you will, and really demonstrating how certain things occur and the follow-on things occur and why that happens, and really gets your mind thinking about cause and effects in life and science and various things. So you kind of combine that with a little bit of what we see on the chaos theory, and it makes a great read. And I know we both just released Everyday Chaos, and we talked through that, and that's a brilliant read as well. So give me a little bit of sense, and I think you've hit on this. If you're the chief of strategy for us, if you were sitting at the chief of strategy for other organizations, what would your advice be at this point in time? How do you help them think through it?
I think the number one lesson is to start with business outcome first and not with technology. You can reimagine the business outcome with technology, but to start with AGI first would be different. I mean, think of what you and I do too. We are not thinking about what can AGI do inside ISG. You and I are thinking about how could sourcing look different using AGI.
Exactly.
Right? So that's probably the first thing I would do. I mean, if I was healthcare, I would not start with AI. I would start with how could medicine be more personalized? How could diagnosis look more accurate? How could treatments look more targeted? If we start from those, then you can start saying, okay, then I can reimagine how an AGI system could analyze medical history, generate data, lifestyle, start creating new care paths, create tailored healthcare advice, create almost sequenced real-time treatment plans. I mean, there's no limit to what technology can do, but if we got to start with business outcome first. Start with what's your industry? Where are you playing? Well, there might be a few blue ocean plays. Start with business outcome first would be my advice, just like you and I are doing for ISG.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. And I think there's going to be a lot of new business models generated for this, but there's still core services that have to be done. And let me just share one more story. I think demand generation, sales, customer relationship management, all of those are ripe for disruption. And I'm not necessarily talking about the chat bots or some of the other things that people have been working on for multiple years, right? But completely thinking about how do I do a demand channel, right? How do I do a demand campaign? So I was on a call with our manufacturing team 2 to 3 weeks ago. The call was live. I had everybody on the call, and we were talking through some of the challenges that we had in our manufacturing sector, especially with the OEMs. So we were talking about the impact of automation, the impact of EVs, some of the new players, some of the players that were really going to struggle. And one of the questions I asked is, well, who are the new EV players and how should we think about them? Easy question for a leader, right?
Right.
Crickets on the phone, as you can imagine. So I happen to have GPT up, so I just asked, I said, who are the top 50 EV players in Europe? And it gave me a list, 50 providers, categorized by the category of EV, which I really didn't even know exists, if I'm totally honest.
Right.
that they were categorized in this. It told me who they were, where they were headquartered, their revenue, a brief description of what they did, their CEO, their CIO, and their head of engineering. Any idea how long that would have taken for me to send an analyst or somebody else out to go out and say, here's my easy question, right? Because it sounds easy. Who are the players? Well, first, what's EV? What are the categories of EV? How do I find all the companies that are doing it? Then I have to go to LinkedIn or something else and find out, who they are. I got to go to MarketWatch or something else to get their revenue or their stock or their private even harder. It just pulled it all together. Now, what was amazing about this is I'm on a call. I ask the question. 30 seconds later, I have the answer. I mean, it changes our level of dialogue on what we could do. And so when I start thinking about demand gen campaigns or selling new products and services or how we position things in the market, it's going to be a fantastic tool. And again, a co-pilot is the perfect world to help us craft those campaigns and help us think through, different strategies. And you're absolutely right. Not only healthcare, but retail, life sciences, banking, I've already seen all the banking things. Think about a wealth manager. How do you better describe my situation? How do you look for products and services that are better aligned to that in the vast array of complexity that we know financial services is now?
And you said one thing which got my interest, and that is AGI is so much more than just a chatbot. And I find that a crying shame. Every time I hear, I get that ChatGPT feels like a chatbot, but AGI is so much more. I mean, imagine if you have connected products and what those connected products could mean for any company if they could design personalized experiences around that. AGI now gives you that. You just need to have a connected product for it. You can
Exactly.
Right? You can even segment customers based on preferences, needs, and real-time behaviors, right? The just the ability to process these amounts of data, identify patterns which you could not humanly do, right? It just helps you to even segment more accurately. Imagine what this does in terms of retention strategies. Imagine what this turns of creating new annuity recurring revenue, ARR streams. Imagine what this does in terms of optimize real-time pricing. We need to think more than just enhance customer support. That's my personal pet peeve. My bugbear to you. Every time I hear it, I react almost allergically.
I do as well. I would give you a big fist bump right now, Prashant, if we were face to face, because I absolutely agree. And over the last 3 months, there's been so many skeptics come out of the woodwork. And I get it, right? Skeptic is driven by fear of the unknown, fear of the change. The hype cycle on these are always over the top. But I think in this case, the skeptics will say, yeah, I got it wrong, or one part of the question wrong. But it got you 95% of the way there or 90% of the way there. And then if you have the intelligence, you're inquisitive, you're a subject matter expert, whatever those things are, you're going to recognize that and go forward and move on. And there's just so many jobs in so many areas where we're just going to be so enhanced by integrating it. And, I never want to silence the skeptics because I think it's always important to listen to, competing opinions and make sure we get this right and everything. But the number of skeptics is crazy right now. Some from the traditional automation space, some people that just don't know, right? And I get that. But man, is it exciting.
And there'll always be skeptics, Steve.
Exactly.
Right? Skeptics is good. They're going to see companies go boom and bust, and they're going to say, see, it doesn't work. We saw this last year with Web3. I still think there's a promise in Web3. I know we're on the other side. I just want to come out on the other side of the winter of Web3 to see what it can actually do. We're going to see the same thing. There's a company called Beautiful.ai. I don't know what happens to Beautiful.ai when Microsoft launches Copilot.
Right.
Exact same thing, right? So there's going to be a lot of consolidation. We're going to see a lot of consolidation in speech, audio, image visual design, conversational form factors, productivity search, what have you, right? So maybe it makes sense to track and scout for these horizontal applications, but fully expecting consolidation to happen there, or someone like Microsoft to launch Copilot. And maybe companies like ours should focus on who are these players and help our clients focus on those 8 verbs, right? What does recommend, predict, optimize, and identify mean for healthcare?
Yeah.
How can we bring that to life? I mean, we will never be able to out Ford, or out BMW.
Right.
But if we can focus on the how of their what.
That's a great point. So, and I've used Beautiful AI as well. Matter of fact, for the same Italy trip, I needed to experiment with something. So I took the output from ChatGPT on the Italy itinerary, and all I did was copy it directly into the prompt on Beautiful AI and said, give me, I think I said a 10-page PowerPoint deck. And it took all the input, gave me a 10-point PowerPoint deck. I had to do one click to tell it what template to use. It picked out the pictures, it put in the itinerary, it created some beautiful daily charts. It had, again, photos of all the places we were going. Now, I just did that for fun, right? That's, most most normal husbands aren't going to do their vacation on PowerPoint. But I did it for a demo, clearly. And it's amazing. Now, does that get sucked into Copilot with Microsoft? Will some of those exceed, others fail? Probably, right? You don't know which ones. But it's really no different than, think of the early 2000s when you and I were much younger men and working with so many startups and everything else at the beginning of the web. We had a lot of failures. Would we look back in history and said the web failed because we had the dot-com boost or dot-com bust? Absolutely not. It was a massive success. We just had to learn what it was good at, what it wasn't, and get their business models right.
Exactly. And then how do you implement those business models, right?
Exactly. And I think that's the piece that's going to drive us forward. Prashant, this has been an amazing talk. I cannot thank you enough for joining. I think you've made the Imagine Your Future podcast just that much better. So thank you for your time. Any final words?
Yeah, maybe nobody's starting from scratch. Everybody's starting from legacy debt. So we got to think brownfield and not greenfield when we talk about AGI. I think that's what I would leave it, and start with continuous business outcomes as opposed to business outcomes.
Exactly. I suspect we're going to get a lot of requests for you to be back on the show. So I am going to keep an open invite for you. If nothing else, just to get great book ideas from you, because I always appreciate what you read. So everybody, if you like what you heard today, you can hear more from your Imagine Your Future team by accessing our website at www.isg1.com/podcast, or just subscribe to your favorite podcast content. So thank you and have a great day.